My wife cheated on me with her best friend, and now she's suing me for half our $850, $0 house and $200, $0 in joint savings. I just found out she's been secretly planning to take everything since our divorce. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here writing all this out, but here I am. My wife Lisa was supposed to be my everything, my partner, my best friend, the person I trusted with my life. We had a nice house, a decent savings account, and a future I thought was secure. We'd been married for 8 years, and honestly, I thought I knew her pretty well. Turns out, I didn't know her at all. It all started about 2 months ago. At first, I noticed little things. She was more distant, secretive about her phone, brushing off my questions with that bitchy edge she always used when she was annoyed. She'd stay late at work. Or so she said, but I'd find her car parked somewhere else, or she'd forget her phone in the bathroom when she left for work in the morning. Small signs, but I brushed them off, thinking maybe she was just stressed or busy. Then things got weird. One night, I stayed up later than usual, waiting for her to come home from a supposed girls' night out. When she finally came in around 2 a.m., she was drunk and giggly but also strangely nervous. I asked her where she'd been, and she snapped at me, saying she was with her friend Megan just hanging out. But I'd known Megan for years, and I knew Lisa hadn't mentioned anything about seeing her that night. Plus, her story kept changing. A week later, I caught her lying about something else, saying she was at the gym when I saw her sneaking out of a different guy's house. That's when I started putting the pieces together. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew deep down that Lisa was cheating on me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I decided to dig a little. I started paying closer attention, checking her phone when she left it behind, monitoring her bank statements. That's when I found the texts. They weren't just innocent messages. They were downright explicit, talking about sex, plans to meet up, and even some flirty comments that made my stomach turn. I saw her calling this guy Mark, her supposed best friend, more than I ever knew she called him before. And the worst part, she was lying about everything. She told me she was working late or going to yoga, but her texts told a different story. They were all about sneaking around, hiding their meetings, and planning their next encounter. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this to me? After all these years, after everything we built together, the moment of truth hit me like a freight train. I confronted her the next day. I showed her the messages, the photos, everything I'd uncovered. She looked me straight in the eyes and lied, of course. Said she was just talking to Mark about work stuff, that they were just friends. But her voice cracked and I saw the guilt in her eyes. That wasn't just friendship. That was something more, something she'd been hiding from me for months. She spun a web of lies, trying to deny everything, saying I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her. But I wasn't stupid. I knew the truth. I felt a rage I'd never experienced before, mixed with heartbreak and confusion. How could she betray me like this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I didn't even recognize her anymore. The woman I married was slipping away, replaced by someone I didn't even know. And all the while, I kept thinking about the money, our house, our savings. We had a combined $850, $0 house, and about $200, $0 in joint savings. We worked hard for that. I was starting to realize that she might have been planning to take it all, even before I found out about the affair. I'd heard rumors that she'd been talking about divorce for months, planning to claim half of everything. It was like she'd already decided to leave me and take everything I'd worked for. That realization made my blood boil. I felt torn apart inside. On one hand, I was devastated that my wife, my partner, had been cheating on me. On the other, I was furious, furious at her lies, furious at the betrayal, furious that she'd even think about taking my hard-earned money and our home. I didn't want to be the victim, but I also knew I had to figure out what to do next. How do you deal with someone who's been lying and sneaking around for months? How do you even begin to process that kind of betrayal? I was angry, hurt, and more confused than I'd ever been in my life. After the initial shock wore off, I started to piece together what this really meant. I mean, I knew she'd been planning something. The way she was acting, secretive, evasive, always brushing me off, wasn't just about work stress or a rough patch. It was about her plotting to take what she could, and I was just finding out too late. I remember sitting in the living room that night, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. My mind was racing, going over every detail, every lie she'd told, every sneaky text I'd uncovered. I felt betrayed on a level I never thought possible. If she was willing to lie about something as huge as an affair, what else was she hiding? Was she planning to leave me? Was she already talking to lawyers? That's when I started to get angry, angrier than I'd ever been. Not just at her, but at myself for not seeing it sooner. I decided I needed answers. I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to come up with some story or some excuse. The next day I confronted her again. This time I told her I knew everything. The affair, the lies, the planning. Her reaction was classic. She gasped, then started crying, saying she didn't mean for it to go this far, that she was just lonely, that Mark was just a distraction. She threw in a bunch of typical bullshit. It didn't mean anything. It was just sex. I love you, I swear. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her this was over. I told her I wasn't going to be played like a fool anymore. I knew she'd been planning to take everything, our house, our savings, and run. And I told her I wasn't going to let her do that without a fight. She kept crying, trying to manipulate me, saying I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. But I saw right through her. I knew her game. She'd been lying from day one, and now I was finally seeing the full picture. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt sick every time I thought about her with Mark, about her sneaking around, hiding things from me. The thought of her in bed with him, sharing secrets and sex, made me want to throw up. I wondered how I'd let it get so bad, how I'd missed all the signs. I'd been so blind, so trusting. Now I just felt hollow. But beneath all that pain, a part of me was starting to think clearly. I realized I had to protect myself, my money, my future, my sanity. I started researching legal options, reading about divorce laws and how property and savings are split. I knew Lisa was already talking to lawyers, trying to get her ducks in a row. I couldn't let her get away with that. I had to be strategic. That's when I decided I'd fight, not just for my dignity but for what's rightfully mine. The house, the savings. She was planning to take half of everything, and I knew I needed to prepare. I started gathering evidence, texts, her bank statements, anything that could prove she was planning to leave me with nothing. I was furious that she thought she could just betray me and walk away with my life's work. I also started to think about how to handle her. She's always been a bitch when she doesn't get her way. Always full of lies, always trying to manipulate people. I knew she'd try to spin things her way, make me look like I was crazy or controlling. But I wasn't going to let her do that. I had to stay calm, gather everything, and be ready for whatever came next. Deep down, I still loved her, part of me always would, but I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And I'd be damned if I let her take everything I had worked for just because she was bored or lonely or whatever bullshit excuse she came up with. So now, I'm in a holding pattern, waiting for her next move. I know she's planning something, probably trying to get her lawyers involved, trying to spin her lies. But I've got my evidence and I've made up my mind. I'm not going down without a fight. I don't care what she says or does, I'll protect what's mine. I never thought I'd have to do this, but here we are. And honestly, I'm exhausted from all the lies and the betrayal. But I also feel a strange sense of clarity, like I finally see who she really is. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I spent every spare moment digging into legal advice, talking to lawyers, trying to understand how the hell I was supposed to protect myself from her. Lisa kept playing the victim, crying and saying how she never meant to hurt me, how she was just lost and confused, like that was supposed to justify everything. But I wasn't buying it anymore. Her tears, her apologies, they all felt hollow, like she was just trying to keep me off balance while she plotted her next move. She kept insisting that the house was our home, that she deserved half of everything because she was married to me. I told her she was full of shit. I knew the law, or at least enough to know she'd be lucky to get a dime of our savings, let alone half the house, given how much she'd been planning to sneak away with. But she kept pushing, throwing up her hands, acting like I was the villain for accusing her of everything. That's when I realized she's a master manipulator and she's already spinning her story to the lawyers, to anyone who will listen. Meanwhile, I started to notice small things changing around the house. She was more aggressive, snapping at me over nothing, trying to make me feel guilty for even questioning her. I caught her trying to hide certain documents, probably legal papers or bank statements, that I'd told her I was keeping an eye on. She'd hide her phone, delete texts, even go so far as to try and change her passwords. It was like watching someone desperately trying to erase their sins, but I had the evidence I needed now. One day, I decided to confront her directly about her plans. I told her I wasn't stupid, that I knew she'd been talking to lawyers, planning to take half of what we had. Her face froze for a second, then she tried to deny it, saying I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of things she didn't do. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Lisa, I've got the texts, the bank statements, the emails. Don't pretend you're innocent. I know you're trying to screw me over and I won't let you." Her reaction was classic. She started crying again, claiming she was just trying to get her fair share, that I was trying to control her, that she was doing this for us, for the kids. But I saw right through her. She's always been good at lying, good at twisting things around. The truth was, she was planning her escape and she wanted to take everything, our house, our savings, everything we built, without caring about what I thought or felt. I felt a mixture of rage and sadness. Rage, because I couldn't believe she'd do this to me, to us. Sadness, because I still loved her, or at least I thought I did, and it hurt so much to see how far she'd gone to betray me. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to her manipulations. Every day, I got more angry at her and more determined to protect what was mine. I also started to look into what legal steps I needed to take. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her take everything without a fight. I reached out to a lawyer specializing in divorce and property law. They told me that our house, given its worth around $850, $0 would be split according to the laws, but because she'd been planning this for months, I could contest her claims if I had enough evidence. I also found out that our joint savings of $200, $0 could be at risk if she managed to convince the courts she was entitled to half. That was a wake-up call. I had to act fast. I started documenting everything: her suspicious phone calls, her changing behaviors, the financial transactions I'd uncovered. I knew she was scheming, probably trying to get her lawyer to push for a quick settlement before I could get my ducks in a row. I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything, especially not after all the years I'd worked hard for this. Life, and here's the thing, her attitude was getting more aggressive each day. She'd throw fits over small things, accuse me of controlling her when I only wanted to protect my assets. It was like she was trying to guilt-trip me into giving her what she wanted, but I refused. I knew what she was doing, and I refused to be manipulated anymore. I'd been stupid enough to trust her, to believe in our marriage, but now I saw her for who she really was, a woman willing to lie, cheat, and scheme her way out of her responsibilities. I also started to think about what I really wanted. I didn't want to be married to someone who could betray me like this, who could lie and cheat and then turn around and cry wolf when she got caught. I wasn't sure if I wanted to save the marriage anymore. My heart was broken, yes, but my mind was clearer than ever. I wanted justice. I wanted to make sure she didn't walk away with my hard-earned money and our home without a fight, so I made a plan. I was going to fight for everything I deserved: my house, my savings, my dignity. I knew it wouldn't be easy. She was a bitch when she didn't get her way, and I knew she'd pull every trick in the book to try and win. But I was ready. I was done being the naive husband. Now I was going to be the one in control of my future, even if it meant tearing her down a little to do it. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Lisa's lawyer started sending over papers trying to claim her rights to half the house and our savings, even though I had plenty of evidence to suggest she'd been planning this for months. I kept my cool, but inside I was seething. Every email, every document she tried to push through just confirmed what I already knew. She was out for herself, and she didn't care how much she hurt me in the process. I remember sitting across from my lawyer one afternoon, going through everything I had collected, screenshots of her texts, bank transactions, her suspicious phone calls. It was a lot to process, but I knew I had to be meticulous. She'd been planning her escape, and I needed to make sure I had the upper hand. I also had to prepare for the worst, a fight over the house, the savings, maybe even custody of the kids if she decided to go full scorched earth. The first big blow came when I discovered she'd opened a secret bank account. I caught it because I was monitoring the joint account, and suddenly there was a large withdrawal, more than she'd ever told me about. Turns out, she'd been squirreling away money, probably to fund her escape or to pay her lawyer. That was the moment I realized she'd been lying to my face for months. I confronted her about it, and she spun some bullshit about needing her own money, that she was entitled to it, that I was trying to control her. I told her she could try all she wanted, but I had proof now. I told her I wasn't going to let her get away with stealing from me, not after everything. She looked furious, like I'd just thrown a wrench into her entire plan. Things escalated quickly. She started accusing me of trying to control her, being paranoid and ruining her life. She even claimed I was abusive, completely false, but she knew how to twist things to get sympathy. I knew her game. She was trying to make me look like the bad guy so the court would feel sorry for her or so she could get a bigger piece of the pie. I had to be careful not to fall into her trap. Meanwhile, her attitude grew more bitchy and manipulative. She'd lash out at me over small things, scream that I was trying to ruin her, even though I was just trying to protect myself. I could see her desperation. She knew her plan was unraveling, and she was doing everything she could to hold onto her share of the assets. I wasn't about to let that happen. I started to dig into the legal side of things even more. I learned that because we had a combined house worth $850, $0, and she was already talking about divorce, she'd probably try to claim half of that. But I had a good lawyer now, and we were building a case to prove she'd been planning her move for months. I also knew that if I could show she was hiding assets or trying to manipulate the courts, I might be able to get a better share of the property or at least prevent her from taking everything she wanted. One night, I caught her trying to delete some emails and hide her phone again. I realized it was time to get serious. I made copies of everything she'd tried to erase. I even hired a private investigator to follow her for a few days, just to see if she was meeting up with Mark or anyone else behind my back. It was a hard pill to swallow, knowing she'd been sneaking around so blatantly, but I had to be thorough. She also started pushing harder to settle quickly, claiming she just wants to move on, that she deserves her fair share, and that I was being unreasonable. But I knew better. I knew she was just trying to pressure me into giving up my rights. The more she pushed, the more I realized I had to hold my ground. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, especially not the house or our savings, without a fight. Honestly, I felt exhausted but also oddly energized. I'd been blindsided, betrayed, and humiliated, but now I was taking control. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. I started preparing myself emotionally and financially, knowing this was going to be a long, ugly battle. I'd never been the confrontational type, but I realized I had no choice now. If I wanted to protect what was mine, I had to stand up and fight. My friends kept telling me I was crazy for even bothering. They said she'd spin her lies and walk away with half, no matter what. But I refused to accept that. I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let her just walk off with everything. I was determined to see this through to the end, to get what I deserved and to make her realize she couldn't just lie her way out of this. In my mind, I was already planning my next moves, and I knew I had to stay sharp. Because if she thought she could get away with it, she was dead wrong. By now, the tension in the house was unbearable. Lisa's bitchy attitude had only gotten worse, and her manipulative side was on full display. She'd throw tantrums over the smallest things, accusing me of trying to control her, even as she hid her phone or deleted evidence right in front of me. It was like living with a different person, someone I barely recognized. Every time she snapped at me, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. How did it come to this? How did the woman I loved turn into someone so cold and calculating? Meanwhile, I kept pushing forward with the legal process. I had my lawyer drafting documents to contest her claims, and I was gathering even more evidence to prove she'd been planning her escape for months. I found bank statements showing large transfers to unknown accounts, receipts from secret meetings she'd had with her lawyer, and even some of her emails where she discussed leaving everything behind. It was clear she was trying to set herself up for a clean break, and she didn't care about what she was leaving behind: me, the house, the life we built. One day, I caught her red-handed trying to transfer more money out of our joint account. I'd set up alerts on the bank app, and when I saw the notification, I knew she'd been trying to drain the account. I called her immediately, furious. She tried to deny it, saying she was just moving some funds around, but I knew better. I told her I was onto her game and I was ready to fight for every penny. That was the moment I realized she was willing to go to any lengths to get what she wanted. She responded by exploding at me, screaming that I was trying to control her, that I was paranoid, and that I was ruining everything. I just looked at her and said, "Lisa, I have the proof. I know what you're doing. If you think you can lie your way out of this, you're dead wrong." Her face twisted in anger and she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. That was the first time I saw her lose her composure so completely. It was almost satisfying, but mostly just sad. Sad because I knew she'd been lying all along and she was now desperate. I also learned she'd been talking to her lawyer behind my back, trying to negotiate a settlement that would give her everything she wanted: half the house, a large chunk of our savings, and full custody of the kids. I knew I had to be ready for a fight. I reached out to my own lawyer again, told him to prepare for a court battle, and made sure I had all my evidence organized. I was determined not to be taken advantage of. I'd worked too hard for this life to see it ripped apart by some scheming, manipulative woman. Her behavior grew even more hostile. She'd lash out at me over petty things, accuse me of trying to control her, or ruining her reputation. She even started spreading rumors to our friends and family, claiming I was an abusive, controlling husband, completely false, but she knew how to spin her lies. I knew she was trying to turn everyone against me, so I kept my head down, focused on the legal fight ahead. One night, I caught her trying to sneak out of the house with a bag full of documents and some cash. I confronted her and she snapped at me, saying she was just leaving for a few days, but I didn't buy it. I told her she wasn't going anywhere until this was settled. That was the moment I realized how far she was willing to go. She'd already crossed the line into full-blown betrayal, and she didn't care what damage she caused. Despite everything, I refused to be broken. I'd been blindsided, yes, but I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I started to think about my next steps: how to protect myself and my assets, how to make sure she didn't get away with stealing my life. I knew she'd try to spin her narrative, but I had the hard evidence now. I'd be damned if I let her walk away with half our house and all our savings just because she felt entitled or was greedy. And honestly, I began to see this whole nightmare as a wake-up call. I realized I'd been too trusting, too naive. I'd given her too much benefit of the doubt for too long. Now, I was learning how to stand up for myself, how to fight for what's rightfully mine. It's a long road ahead: court dates, negotiations, maybe even more betrayals, but I'm ready. I refuse to let her take everything I've worked for without a fight. I've got my evidence, my lawyer, and a new resolve. The woman I married is gone, replaced by this scheming, manipulative stranger, and I'm not going to let her win. The court date finally arrived after months of back and forth, legal battles, and endless sleepless nights. I'd never felt so drained in my life, but I knew I had to stay strong. Lisa was there, looking smug and bitchy as ever, trying to project an air of innocence while her lawyer whispered strategies into her ear. She kept throwing me dirty looks like she thought she'd already won. But I had everything laid out: proof of her lies, her financial schemes, her secret accounts, and I was ready to fight. The courtroom was tense. My lawyer presented all the evidence: the texts, the bank statements, the emails where she discussed her plans to leave, even her attempts to hide assets. Lisa's lawyer tried to spin stories, claiming she was entitled to half because she was married for so long, and that I was trying to deprive her of her rightful share. But the judge saw through her bullshit. My evidence was solid. It proved she'd been planning her escape for months, that she'd been manipulating the finances, and that she'd lied repeatedly. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Lisa was awarded a very small portion of the savings because she had some claim to it, but she was completely denied her half of the house. The court acknowledged her premeditated scheme to take everything and her attempts to hide assets. She looked furious when the decision was announced, but I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Justice had been served, and I'd protected what was mine. After the ruling, Lisa's true colors came out even more. She screamed and yelled, calling me every name in the book, accusing me of ruining her life. But I didn't care anymore. I knew the truth, and I knew I'd done everything I could to stand up for myself. She stormed out of the courtroom, still trying to spin her lies, but it was clear she'd lost control of the situation. The aftermath was a whirlwind. I moved out of the house, leaving her behind with her anger and her scheming. I took control of my finances, paid off some debts, and started rebuilding my life. I knew it wouldn't be easy, trusting anyone again, especially after such betrayal, was going to take time. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I'd been through hell, but I'd come out stronger. Looking back, I realized that this whole experience taught me a lot about trust, betrayal, and resilience. I learned that some people, women or men, can hide their true intentions behind a mask of love and friendship. I also learned that it's crucial to protect yourself, to keep tabs on your assets, and to never let anyone manipulate you into giving up what's rightfully yours. Most importantly, I learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about standing your ground, protecting what's yours, and making sure the truth comes out. Lisa thought she could cheat her way out of this mess, but I proved her wrong. I won't lie. It hurts to know she was capable of such deception, but I'm finally at peace knowing I fought for myself and my future. Now, I'm focusing on healing. I'm rebuilding my savings, planning for a future where I can trust again, and most of all, I'm making sure I never let anyone manipulate me like that again. It's been a brutal lesson, but one I needed. For anyone out there going through something similar, just remember, don't let betrayal define you. Stand up, fight for what's yours, and never doubt your worth. Because in the end, the truth will always come out, and you have to be ready to face it.